Habakkuk 2 verse 12 reads, Woe to him who builds a city with bloodshed and establishes a town by crime. The sin here is identified as hurting others in order to gain power for yourself. Once again, this is exactly what Babylon did in their conquest. The Babylonians were greedy for power. They didn't care who they hurt as long as they built their empire. You may think, well, I'm not a violent person. Surely these verses do not apply to me. You may not be a violent person, but we can all be tempted to hurt others in ways in order to increase our own power. We may not physically hurt the other person, but we may say something to damage their reputation in order to strengthen our position. It can happen at work. We climb our way to the top by stepping on the backs of our co workers. It can happen at home, verbal abuses of spouses in order to gain power. Anytime we hurt another person in order to increase our own power in the relationship, we have committed a type of violence against that person. What is God's judgment for those of us who try to gain power likewise? Let's look at verses Habakkuk 2:13 and 14. God says, Has not the Lord Almighty determined that the people's labor is only fuel for fire, that the nations exhaust themselves for nothing? For the earth would be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. God is sovereign. He is the only one with real power in this world. And He has determined that all your efforts at grabbing power for yourself will prove useless in the end. All your labors are only fuel for the fire. Your labors will not only provide fuel for the fire of God's judgment, they will be burnt up and destroyed themselves. You will lose it all. The fourth woe is found in verse 15 and 17, and it deals with the sin of exploitation. Look at verse 15. Woe to him who gives drink to his neighbor, pouring it from the wineskins till they are drunk, so that he can gaze on their naked bodies. The sin here is identified as taking advantage of others in order to gain pleasure for yourself. This specific example given here is that of encouraging someone to get drunk and taking advantage of him. Exploitation is to take advantage of people's hopes in order to gain for oneself is a sin. Verse 16, God says, You will be filled with shame instead of glory. Now it's your turn. Drink and be exposed. The cup from the Lord's right hand is coming around to you, and disgrace will cover your glory. When you take advantage of others to gain pleasure for yourself, God says, you will be filled with shame and disgrace. How can you gain life and not lose it? You serve God instead of self by compassion rather than violence. Philippians 2 verse 3 says, Do nothing out of selfish ambition, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. You serve God instead of self by service rather than exploitation. Matthew 20:25 to 28, Jesus teaches us that whoever wants to becomes great among you must be your servant, just as the Son of Man. So let's commit ourselves to lose our life for our dear Lord and be blessed.